We'll hear more about that coming up.
Support comes from Kid Space Museum, presenting Wired for Wonder, a mind-bending multisensory maze co-created with the Getty's PST Art. Art and science collide. School's out, STEAM is in. Families are invited to explore this immersive adventure that connects art, neuroscience, and engineering in unforgettable ways. The maze is open daily with new evening hours on Friday and Saturday. Tickets available for a limited time. Visit kidspacemuseum.org for details and tickets.
Support for NPR comes from BritBox, committed to shaking up people's watch list with British TV, including new original series like Ludwig, starring Peep Show's David Mitchell. Streaming now at BritBox.com/NPR. Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their clients' best interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. And Viking, committed to exploring the world in comfort with a docking location in central Paris. Viking is dedicated to bringing curious travelers closer to destinations across France. Learn more at Viking.com.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Michelle Martin.
And I'm Steve Inskeep.
I wish they all could be California. I wish they all could be California.
We're taking time to remember the songwriter who had that wish, Brian Wilson, who was a genius. That is not my word. Paul McCartney said that about him, and so did Bob Dylan. With the Beach Boys in the 1960s, Brian Wilson elevated the sounds of California surf music with elaborate choral arrangements and orchestral pomp. He also lost decades to mental illness and drug abuse before making a midlife comeback. What a life. His family announced yesterday that he has died at the age of 82, and so we called Brian Wilson biographer Peter Ames Carlin.
In 1962, when the Beach Boys really first began to make records and he emerged as their visionary musically and compositionally, the music around was very simple, but Brian sort of created this musical palette. The sound is so dense and so full of different instruments being applied in so many unexpected ways. Fun, for instance, which is about a car. He uses baritone saxophones as this low rumble that just sort of evokes this engine without really drawing attention to it. It's just there beneath the surface of the music.
He, of course, is also using a lot of human voices as instruments here.
Yes, he was very inspired by the Four Freshmen, which was a jazz vocal harmony band from the 50s. And he wove his voice and the voices of his brothers, Carl and Dennis, and his cousin Mike Love and Al Jardine, their bandmate, into these incredibly elaborate sort of harmonic constructions that really transformed the sonic vocabulary of rock and roll.
Round, round, get around, I get around, yeah, get around, round, round, I get around.
I mean, genius is an overused word, but just given the disparity between the training that he received and what he achieved, just in terms of his ability to write arrangements and laying that above this foundation that came straight out of Chuck Berry, just 3-chord rhythm and blues inspired rock and roll.
You said a disparity between what he did and the training he received. What was that training?
Not much. I mean, I think he took some classes in high school, and learned the basics of theory, but he just had this amazing God-given ability. And, by the time he was 22, 23 years old, he was writing and recording Good Vibrations, which was just jaw-dropping to all the people, even his peers, John Lennon and Paul McCartney and Bob Dylan and all the greats of that era just heard that song and were like, what's even happening here?
In her eyes, she goes with me to a blossom. I'm picking up good vibrations. She's giving me good citations. I'm picking up good vibrations.
Why do you think it is that even as his music was coming together in this way, his life was seemingly coming apart?
Well, he had, along with his musical gifts, he also had, psychiatric trouble. I mean, and for many, many years, he really didn't get any kind of treatment. He self-medicated with drugs or alcohol or food and just anything to get through the days. Eventually, he did get a much more stable family situation and much more competent and professional psychiatric treatment. And once that happened, he had this incredible 30-year coda from the mid-90s into the teens and beyond, where he managed to finish Smile, the sort of legendarily uncompleted sort of rock symphony he started working on in 1966.
A joke of grief, hard-hearted on, beyond belief, a broken man too tough to cry.
When it finally appeared in 2004, it was astounding that he had found the courage and the strength to go back to this thing he had started and left undone in his early 20s and actually bring it to fruition.
What was it like in those later years for you to talk with him about his life as a biographer?
Well, the way I always described Brian to friends is he's weirder than you can imagine, but not as crazy as you might think. There was a lot about Brian that was quirky and hilarious and strange. He had a way, I mean, this is going to sound kind of weird, but somebody had cautioned me of this before I met him, which is that sometimes Brian knows things about you that you haven't told him yet. A friend of his told me once that they had a lot of conversations about a particular version of Rhapsody in Blue, the Gershwin piece that Brian was obsessed with, but neither of them had the album. And one day the guy came across it like in a garage sale, and he just had it in his living room and was thinking, I got to give this to Brian. And there was a knock on the door, and Brian was there saying, you got that Gershwin, right? And it was like, he said, I can't explain that. I don't know how that happened, but there he was.
What are some kinds of music of today that you think we wouldn't have in quite the same way were it not for the influence decades ago of Brian Wilson?
I think he left his mark in so many ways, but I think probably primarily it's just his endless fascination with and skill at manipulating different sounds and weaving together different textures and instruments in completely unexpected ways. And his ability to take all these sort of far-flung styles and sounds and weave them together into something that not only made sense, but also was fit in the radio alongside with all the other sort of pop rock hits of the day. It's in some ways, it's almost easier to talk about the styles of music that he didn't influence in pop music, but he just had a very, very deep and very, very broad imprint on popular music.
Peter Ames Carlin wrote a 2006 biography called Catch a Wave, The Rise, Fall, and Redemption of the Beach Boys' Brian Wilson, who has died. Mr. Carlin, thanks so much.
Thank you, Steve.
God only knows what I'd be without you. If you should ever leave me.
This is NPR News.
KCRW sponsors include FX, presenting The Bear. In Season 3, Carmi pushes himself harder than ever while his crew do their best to match his intensity. Starring Jeremy Allen White, Ayo Edebiri, and Evan Moss Backrack. Awards eligible, now on Hulu.
Support comes from Center Theater Group, presenting Parade, coming to the Amundsen Theater June 17th through July 12th. Winner of the Tony Award for Best Musical Revival, the New York Times called it timely, riveting, and gorgeously sung. Parade reminds us that to love, we must truly see one another. See it before the parade passes by, June 17th through July 12th. Tickets at amundsentheater.org.
KCRW sponsors include National Geographic, presenting David Blaine, Do Not Attempt, a 6-part series that follows magician David Blaine exploring the world through the lens of magic. Emmy eligible. Debut.disney.com/FYC/NatGeo.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The House is set to vote today on more than $9 billion in proposed funding cuts through DOGE actions, including foreign aid and public media funding. Separately, NPR's Corey Turner reports House Republicans are also looking to hold colleges accountable for student loans.
There is pretty broad consensus around the idea that we need some kind of accountability for colleges. But I heard several really key worries about this plan. One of them is that it would require a ton of data, and the Education Department, which would have to collect it, has half the staff that it had before President Trump took office. There's another problem I heard with the math behind these school penalties.
NPR's Corey Turner reporting. The House Oversight Committee is questioning 3 Democratic governors of states. Many Republican lawmakers have criticized the sanctuary states for immigrants in the U.S. without legal status. They include Minnesota Governor and former vice presidential candidate Tim Walz. In this exchange with committee chair James Comer, Walz said the immigration system had been broken for a long time.
It's one of the reasons why when you all were out campaigning, or not that I can recall other than that we talked about the need to pass the bipartisan border legislation that would have done many of the things that as a governor I know would have made our jobs easier.
This is NPR News. Several Tesla owners in France are suing the company owned by Elon Musk. They argue the vehicles they bought for environmental reasons are now far-right symbols reinforced by Musk's public behavior on the political stage. They're claiming direct and concrete harm. However, the billionaire CEO says people should be going after the culprits who target the company through various acts of criminal vandalism. A new global survey finds that more than half of people in key U.S. allied nations, including France, the U.K., Germany, and Japan, say they have no confidence in President Trump's leadership in world affairs. But, as NPR's Frank Langford tells us, many also view Trump as a strong leader.
People in 15 of 24 countries downgraded their ratings of the U.S., according to the survey by the Pew Research Center. A majority in almost every country surveyed viewed the president as arrogant. Richard White runs the Global Attitudes team at Pew. He says many people want the U.S. to be more engaged in solving big problems, such as climate change.
What people want to see is the U.S. kind of using its enormous power to work with other countries. So the U.S. is going its own way, it's seen more negatively than when it's working with others.
The survey also found that 67% described Trump as a strong leader, and ratings of the U.S. improved in Israel, India, and Turkey. Pew surveyed more than 28,000 people. Frank Langford, NPR News.
I'm Lakshmi Singh, NPR News in Washington.
KCRW sponsors include Max, presenting The Last of Us. Season 2 picks up 5 years later as Joel and Ellie's past resurfaces, drawing them into conflict with each other. Emmy eligible for Outstanding Drama Series and all other categories.
Hello and good morning. Thank you so much for being here on this Thursday morning. Listening to Morning Edition on 89.9 KCRW. It's 8:33.
KCRW sponsors include Supermicro and NVIDIA, accelerating AI with a wide range of AI servers, networking, and the NVIDIA AI Enterprise software platform. Supermicro is committed to driving AI infrastructure breakthroughs with rack-scale innovations.
KCRW sponsors include Prime Video, presenting The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. The drama series is available for TV Academy members at ConsiderAmazon.com.
Support for NPR comes from the Wallace Foundation, an independent, nonpartisan research foundation collaborating with grantees and partners in the arts, school leadership, and youth development. More at wallacefoundation.org. And Jarl and Pamela Moe, focusing on civil liberties, foster youth, public radio, and the arts.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Steve Inskeep.
And I'm Michelle Martin. Good morning. Hundreds of migrants have been arrested in Puerto Rico as part of President Trump's immigration crackdown. NPR's Sergio Martinez Beltran takes us to a Dominican neighborhood on the island where people say they're afraid.
45-year-old construction worker Juan Vega Paredes did not choose the nickname Avocado Man, but now he introduces himself with it.
Yo soy el hombre del aguacate.
He got the nickname after what happened on January 26th. He was on his way to buy some avocados when he was detained by federal immigration agents.
Este es el arbolito que me acuerdo. Aquí mismo porque
This is the tree. This is exactly where I was detained, says Vega Paredes in front of a yellow house in Barrio Obrero, a poor working class neighborhood where almost everyone you encounter is Dominican. And so is Vega Paredes, who came to Puerto Rico in 2021. He's married to a U.S. citizen and does not have a criminal record, but he's been living here without legal status.
el hermano está ahí mismo, el doble a la derecha.
Vega Paredes was picked up by immigration agents who were conducting a big raid in Barrio Obrero, targeting migrants, mostly Dominicans, without legal status. It was Sunday. He was supposed to work.
Y ese domingo dije no voy a trabajar que estoy cansado. Tremendo domingo, compadre.
I was tired, so I decided not to go to work, he says. What a Sunday. He ended up being whisked away in an unmarked car. He was detained for nearly 2 months, first at an immigration facility in Miami and later at a federal prison there. Eventually, he was released on a $10,000 immigration bond. He has to check in with ICE next month, and it's unclear what will happen at that meeting. Vega Paredes is one of the nearly 500 immigrants detained by immigration agents in Puerto Rico since Trump took office. According to ICE, about 75% of them are Dominicans. Fewer than 80 people had criminal records. Rebecca Gonzalez Ramos, a top ICE official in Puerto Rico, says her office does not target Dominicans.
We work based on intelligence, executing either arrest warrants or final orders of deportation.
She says her agents will stop people on the street and might ask them or others around for proof of their legal status. That's why these days the atmosphere is tense in Barrio Obrero. Now we have to carry our immigration documents at all times, says Digna Gomez. She lives in a house overlooking where Vega Paredes was picked up by ICE. She saw the whole thing. It scared her. She's also Dominican, but in the U.S. territory legally. Gomez says she knows of many others being picked up. Like the barber, she says, who hid in a dumpster, or El Pescador, the fisherman who was arrested down the street with his son. Annette Martinez Orabona is the executive director of ACLU of Puerto Rico. She says ICE operations like this have happened before in Barrio Obrero, but never at this scale.
Barrio Obrero está siendo estigmatizado como comunidad.
Barrio Obrero is being stigmatized as a community, she says, with interventions that happen at all times and agents arresting more people again and again. The ACLU of Puerto Rico is spearheading an alliance between lawyers and the Medical Doctors Guild, whose members are already visiting patients at their homes since many are scared and not going out to receive medical care. Churches in Barrio Obrero, like the San Pablo Methodist Church, are also helping migrants with food and access to legal aid. Across the street from that church is the small tree-lined Plaza Barceló. It's nestled between homes, bars, and places for migrants to send money back to the Dominican Republic. It's the heart of Barrio Obrero, the place where people meet and play dominoes, and where people take a break from work and life's turmoil. Like 61-year-old Susana Rosario. She's Dominican and has a green card now, but she used to live here without legal status. She now works for the city of San Juan as a street sweeper. Barrio Obrero is part of her route.
Casi no se ve gente y eso se ha impactado los negocios.
She says there's hardly anyone outside these days. The businesses are empty. A few days later, I saw Rosario again at the plaza. She was crying and didn't want to be recorded. Her two Dominican neighbors, good kids as she describes them, were just picked up by ICE at a construction site nearby. Sergio Martinez Beltrán, NPR News, San Juan, Puerto Rico.
Harvey Weinstein has been convicted again. He was one of the most powerful men in Hollywood brought down in the Me Too years. He was convicted once of sex crimes, saw that verdict overturned on appeal, and then was tried again. This new verdict comes in a post-Me Too moment with discord among the jury spilling into public view. Ilya Meritz has been covering the trial for NPR. Ilya, good morning.
Good morning.
What were the charges this time?
So Harvey Weinstein was found guilty of criminal sex act in the first degree, one count. He was also found not guilty of another count of criminal sex act in the first degree. Those two counts relate to two different encounters with two different women, both in 2006. Both of those women described what happened to them in their own words from the witness stand. It was graphic at times, it was emotional. The jury found one woman's story met the burden of proof, the others did not. Jurors have not yet decided on a third count against Harvey Weinstein, and that is rape in the third degree, so they'll continue deliberating that count on orders of the judge.
Interesting. I can't really recall covering a trial where you would have a partial verdict released and then send the jury back to think some more. Why this way?
So very soon after deliberations began, tensions emerged on the jury. Last week, one juror asked to be excused, saying the atmosphere had become really uncomfortable. Then yesterday, the jury foreman told the judge he was concerned for his safety. He suggested that another juror was not accepting of the fact that he had his own opinion and said that juror was yelling at him. The judge at that point said it was time for a cooling off period. He sent them away for lunch, and I think he's hoping that by announcing a partial verdict, this will move things along.
I get it. Well, does any of that tension cast the verdict in doubt?
Harvey Weinstein's lawyers have made over a dozen motions for mistrial throughout this whole proceeding. All of them have been denied. Among other things, they've said they're concerned that jurors may have considered evidence that was not, or information that was not presented at trial. So it seems possible.
Okay. So tell me, where does all this fit in with everything else, this retrial?
Prosecutors started this trial with a disadvantage. They had just 3 accusers to present to the jury this time, unlike 6 the last time. So getting a conviction at all, even on just one count, is a victory for them and for the broader Me Too movement. It did feel to many observers like a test of Me Too's continued power. Many accused men have made or are attempting comebacks: Kevin Spacey, Louis C.K., Andrew Cuomo, Donald Trump, to name a few. So getting this conviction has to be a relief for prosecutors.
Ilya, thanks so much for the insights. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Ilya Meritz is covering Harvey Weinstein's latest trial for NPR. This is NPR News.
And you're listening to 89.9 KCRW. I'm Danielle Chiriguayo. Disney and NBC Universal have filed a lawsuit in LA against a popular AI image generator. The Hollywood giants accuse the company Midjourney of illegally using their content to create versions of their famous characters, like Darth Vader from Star Wars and the Minions from Despicable Me. The two companies are alleging that Midjourney has ignored their request to stop, and the company has not publicly responded to the lawsuit as of yet. Disney and NBC Universal are considered the first major studios to file copyright infringement lawsuits against an AI image generating service in the U.S. And thousands of video game actors and performers officially ended their nearly year-long strike yesterday after the union reached a tentative agreement with video game companies. The major striking point that kept performers off the job for more than 300 days was protections around generative AI. The video game companies say the deal delivers historic wage increases and AI provisions around transparency, consent, and compensation. With performers back on the job, union leaders will consider the agreement before potentially sending it out for members to ratify. And as just a note, several KCRW staff members are covered under SAG-AFTRA. However, we are under a separate contract. This is KCRW News.
KCRW sponsors include Netflix presenting Martha, directed by R.J. Cutler. The documentary on Martha Stewart traces her rise as the original influencer and America's first self-made female billionaire. Emmy eligible, outstanding documentary feature.
It's Chris Doritas, your DJ for KCRW's Summer Nights at Cabrillo Marine Aquarium.
Enjoy after-hours access to the exhibits, plus beach access during the Grunion Run. That's a marine biology lesson come to life. It's free, all ages, and a great way to check out the aquarium and hit the dance floor. You'll get live sets from me and my KCRW colleague, Dan Wilcox. Tomorrow night, RSVP now at kcrw.com/summer nights.
Support for NPR comes from the station and from Eric and Wendy Schmidt through the Schmidt Family Foundation, working toward a healthy, resilient, secure world for all. On the web at theschmidt.org. From Jarl and Pamela Mohn, focusing on civil liberties, foster youth, public radio, and the arts. And from the Walton Family Foundation, working to create access to opportunity for people and communities by tackling tough social and environmental problems. More information is at waltonfamilyfoundation.org.
This morning edition from NPR News. I'm Steve Inskeep.
And I'm Michelle Martin. Good morning. There's a phrase you might have heard over the last few years on TikTok and money blogs.
This is money dysmorphia.
Money dysmorphia.
Money dysmorphia.
Now, money dysmorphia is not a clinical diagnosis. It refers to young Americans now being richer than young people in previous generations. And yet, about 3 in 5 are anxious about their finances. Our colleague Darian Woods at The Indicator looks at why some in Gen Z feel like they're in an economic dump, even if they're doing okay.
The median income for a 25-year-old is somewhere between $42,000 and $50,000 a year. Millennials, Gen Xers, baby boomers all earned significantly less at that age, even accounting for inflation. People's wealth is also higher. And yet, a significant portion of young people today feel like they don't have enough. There's student debt, high house prices, and inequality, yes, but they don't fully explain this mismatch. Tali Sharrett is a neuroscientist at MIT and University College London. She thinks there are some other factors at play.
In order to be happy and satisfied, we need to see ourselves progressing.
A sense of progression is important, Tali says, because we easily get used to the status quo.
So it might be that you have great things in your life, like an interesting job or a comfortable home, but it brings you less joy on a day-to-day basis because it's been there all the time.
This is called habituation, a fundamental concept in psychology.
And so coming back to the Gen Z kind of idea is that, well, the fact that they have quite a bit doesn't mean that they don't then feel that they need more.
The second reason for young people's financial dissatisfaction, Tali says, is comparison.
They are the generation where social media is a huge thing that they kind of grew up with. Everyone's posting their travels or their whatever. And, you know, half of it is not really an accurate representation of what's true. So now you're comparing yourself to what appears to be your peers. That will definitely have a negative effect.
Tali Sharrett says that the pains of comparison are real.
There's so many studies, and some of these are studies that we've conducted that show that people will care more and are happier if they get more rewards, in this case money, relative to others.
Now, somebody listening into our conversation might say, you two are gaslighting me, that you're essentially saying this is all in your head. What do you have to say to that critique?
I agree with the fact that what matters is your subjective experience. Here's the thing. If the reason you are anxious and sad and you know, could be potentially lessened by simply not following certain people on social media, maybe having a break from social media. I mean, try to make a change in your habits to see whether, as a result, maybe that does have a positive effect.
Tali also points out that dissatisfaction with the status quo can be a powerful driver for change. After all, if we'd stayed happy with how things were thousands of years ago, we might never have left our caves. Darian Woods, NPR News.
Support for Planet Money comes from Charles Schwab, offering investors choices like full-service wealth management, advice, investing, and trading on Thinkorswim. Learn more at schwab.com.
Listening to 89.9 KCRW, and it is 8:50.
KCRW sponsors include Hulu, presenting the drama series Paradise, starring Sterling K. Brown, Julianne Nicholson, and James Marsden. Emmy eligible. fyc.hulu.com.
Support comes from California CASA, a nonprofit organization working to ensure that young people in the foster care system have both a voice and the services they need to thrive. A court-appointed special advocate, or CASA, serves as a trusted adult for a child in foster care, advocating for their best interests in court and beyond. Learn more at californiacasa.org.
Hey, it's Ann Litt, your DJ on the next Morning Becomes Eclectic. I'm so excited to welcome Sharon Van Etten to KCRW's Performance Studio for a live session showcasing her insightful lyrics and indie stylings. We'll play some music together, then in the 10 a.m. hour, hand things off to Sharon and her band, The Attachment Theory, for an exclusive session featuring tracks from their latest album together. Morning Becomes Eclectic starts at 9 on 89.9 KCRW.
KCRW sponsors include Peacock, presenting The Day of the Jackal. Eddie Redmayne and Lashana Lynch star in the Emmy-eligible original series. The Day of the Jackal is streaming now only on Peacock.
On this Thursday, thank you so much for being here with member-supported 89.9 KCRW. Just about 10 minutes. Morning Becomes Eclectic. Sharon Van Etten. I know I'm excited. Are you? Better stay tuned.
This is Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Michelle Martin.
I'm Stephen Skeep with a story of a really big rock. The Rock of Gibraltar, which has been the focus of territorial disputes for centuries. Now the European Union, Spain, and Britain have announced a deal to resolve one of them. Here's NPR's Lauren Frere.
Dominating the horizon at the southernmost tip of Europe stands a majestic Jurassic limestone rock.
The Rock of Gibraltar may be physically attached to Spain, but as this tourism video explains, it's been British soil for more than 300 years. The official language is English and currency the British pound. Gibraltar's economy, though, is linked to EU member Spain. 15,000 people commute across the border daily. You literally walk across an isthmus that's got an airport runway on it, too. When Britain left the EU 5 years ago, that land bridge became an external EU border. And there was gridlock. Commuters often faced passport checks.
People have sometimes queued for hours.
British Foreign Secretary David Lammy told reporters those gridlock days are now over. People and goods will once again flow freely across that border. This was the last big unresolved issue from Brexit, Lammy says.
A historic solution that I believe is pragmatic and gives the people of Gibraltar the certainty they need.
Certainty that they're still part of the UK, but will also now be part of Europe's visa-free Schengen travel zone.
Este acuerdo marca un antes.
New beginning, Spain's Foreign Minister Jose Alvarez also told reporters. Entry and exit checks will still happen at Gibraltar's airport and port. The deal still has to be ratified by the British and Spanish parliaments. But officials are calling this a milestone that benefits everyone. Lauren Frere, NPR News, London.
This week, NPR is talking about solutions for living and building on a hotter planet. Today we go to Florida, where communities are still recovering from 2 hurricanes intensified by climate change. Jessica Mazzaros with WSF tells us how people are adapting around Tampa Bay.
Steve Pabola is touring the wreckage Hurricane Helene left behind on his family's one-story house in Hudson, just north of Tampa. It's along a saltwater canal that connects to the Gulf of Mexico.
So if you look over there, I left the floodlight in the garage.
It's hip high, but goes up in other parts of the home. About 4 feet of storm surge pushed through, soaking the drywall, wood floors, and electrical system. Now he's rebuilding.
Well, everything we do is going to be considered
what we should or shouldn't do because of flooding.
So Papola is replacing the flooring with tile because floodwaters can't penetrate it.
We're going to raise the outlets to 24 inches.
He estimates all the repairs will cost $145,000. Flood insurance is covering this, but it likely won't cover the price of elevating the actual house once the internal construction is done. Papola is one of at least tens of thousands in Florida reconstructing their homes after last year's storms. They're building to withstand the impacts from climate change, which is raising sea levels and making storms stronger and wetter. Santina Contreras specializes in urban planning at the University of Southern California. She says what these homeowners are doing is called individual adaptation.
There's a lot of ways that communities are on their own doing things to try to work towards building resilience that is kind of centered more on doing maybe smaller scale approaches or things that they can do at the household level.
Like the things Papola is doing, installing tile and raising the electrical outlets. Then there's the larger scale adaptations like policy changes.
To sort of manage all sorts of risks that are coming.
Take Fort Myers Beach in southwest Florida, for example. Hurricane Ian nearly wiped out the town in 2022. Now, some restaurants and stores there have to flood-proof their buildings if they want to stay at ground level with the tourist foot traffic. Some business owners are planning to just let the water come in.
We're going to open the front door, open the back door, let the water flow through.
This is Jackie Lizak. She's president of the town's Chamber of Commerce.
We've learned if the water flows through, in our case, because we have movement of the water, the mud doesn't stick around.
The idea is to unplug electrical appliances like refrigerators and dishwashers and move them to higher ground, along with any merchandise.
We're calling it plug and play.
Then all that's left in the building is concrete walls and floors and PVC furniture, bars, and decks. That's one solution to hurricanes. But Tampa General Hospital is taking a different approach. The nonprofit sits just 20 feet away from Tampa Bay.
You can see our seawall here, a view of downtown Tampa.
Dustin Pastor is an architect responsible for wrapping a portable wall around the facility. It takes 3 days to set up this wall, which can withstand 9 feet of storm surge and 130-mile-an-hour winds. The panels protect fuel tanks for the hospital's backup generators. Pastor says the $1 million Norwegian technology passed the storm surge test when Hurricane Helene sent the water in the bay halfway up the panels.
We could see the risk, in a clearer light and realize that it was worth the money and the effort to make an improvement like that.
Civil engineer Justin Keller thinks about risk a lot. He helps multiple barrier island communities adapt to rising seas from global warming. The roadways there can flood, even on clear, sunny days during a high tide event.
One of the solutions that have been used throughout the country is more or less managed retreat.
Managed retreat means strategically moving people and infrastructure out of risky areas. But for those invested in staying by the water, Keller says it will take elevating homes and the property surrounding them, like garages, driveways, and seawalls. That way, the local governments can then raise the roadways and stormwater infrastructure.
There's no magic solution to make this area hurricane-proof.
Keller says the best thing to do is bring your home up to code. Steve Papola, the homeowner in Hudson, is doing just that. But it's not for him. It's for the next family.
We have decided that once we rehabilitate and the house is put back in order, we're most likely going to sell it.
Papola says his wife has had a lot of weather anxiety since Hurricane Helene. So they're opting for land versus waterfront property. For NPR News, I'm Jessica Mazzaros in Hudson, Florida.
We'll have more stories about climate solutions this week on air and online at npr.org/Climate Week.
Support for NPR's Climate Solutions Week, Rethinking Home, comes from the Nature Conservancy, committed to the belief that nature is common ground for everyone, and that protecting nature is vital to solving today's challenges. Learn more at nature.org/NPR.
This is Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm Michelle Martin.
And I'm Steve Inskeep.
And you are listening to 89.9 KCRW. I'm Danielle Chiriguayo. Downtown LA is open yet again after a second night of curfews and the sixth straight day of protests over immigration sweeps. Dozens of protesters were arrested last night after an unlawful assembly was declared, though reports reports of vandalism and unrest seem to be easing. Federal officials say they've detained more than 300 undocumented immigrants in LA in the last week, and that allegedly includes 2 people arrested at churches in the city of Downey, according to locals. Southland will likely see another day of protest today, and the 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew in the downtown area could be extended into tonight. So stick with KCRW this afternoon for All Things Considered with Steve Giatakis for the latest. You are listening to KCRW News.
Hi, it's Chris Doritas, your DJ for KCRW's Summer Nights at Cabrillo Marine Aquarium. Enjoy after-hours access to the exhibits, plus beach access during the Grunion Run. That's a marine biology lesson come to life. It's free, all ages, and a great way to check out the aquarium and hit the dance floor. You'll get live sets from me and my KCRW colleague, Dan Wilcox. Tomorrow night, RSVP now at kcrw.com/summernights.
On this Thursday, you are listening to member-supported KCRW Santa Monica, Los Angeles, KDRW Santa Barbara, Montecito, KCRI Indio, Palm Springs, KCRU Oxnard Ventura, and KCRY Mojave. KCRW is a community service of Santa Monica College with your news, music, culture, and of course, your choice for NPR in Southern California. More top headlines are next, and then of course, Morning Becomes Eclectic with Ann Litt. Happy Thursday.
Live